Welcome to NTD China News. I'm Karen Chang. Making headlines this Friday, April 12th. With potential war at its doorstep, China continues calls for dialogue. Why an elementary school won't let this 10-year-old girl go back to class, and Shanghai authorities seize 6,000 tons of mining waste imported from overseas. A U.S. spy agency has claimed that North Korea may be in possession of a nuclear weapon that could be launched. With threats from the rogue regime growing louder each day, Beijing has maintained the same official response. But behind the scenes, the gears of the Communist Party's war machine may be turning.
No comment. That's what China's Foreign Ministry spokesman Hong Li said earlier today in response to a report by U.S. spy agencies saying North Korea has a nuclear weapon it could mount on a missile. Several U.S. and South Korean officials were also quick to deny the report. This is after promises by North Korea to turn its enemies' strongholds into a sea of flames. Even with an aggressive, potentially nuclear rogue regime sharing a border with China, Hong Li maintained dialogue was the way to resolve tensions on the Korean Peninsula.
Our position on the North Korean nuclear issue is clear. China upholds the maintenance of peace and stability on the Korean Peninsula and is pushing for its denuclearization via talks and consultations. No matter what changes there are in the situation, we will uphold this direction.
But the Chinese Communist Party's sway over North Korea may be waning. China is considered the only significant ally of Pyongyang and the only country that could have any influence over the decisions of Kim Jong-un's regime. But despite Hong's calls for talk, the Chinese regime is clearly backing it up with military muscle. U.S. officials reported earlier this month that China has been mobilizing troops and jets along the China-North Korea border, claims China's Ministry of National Defense denied today. But that denial coincides with a report from Hong Kong-based South China Morning Post that the People's Liberation Army has been conducting live fire drills with tanks and armored vehicles along the border. On the North Korean side, paratroopers were seen conducting drills. A helicopter circled a North Korean border town and dropped off at least 5 people. Chinese and Japanese journalists also spotted similar drills last night.
Last week, we reported that a Chinese lawyer was detained by a court after defending a Falun Gong practitioner. Today, another human rights lawyer with Falun Gong clients was badly beaten by police. Cheng Hai, shown here with an injury to his face, says about 10 uniformed police assaulted him in Dalian city in northeastern Liaoning Province. They kicked him, tore his clothes, and punched his face. It happened outside a Dalian courthouse. Cheng was there with another lawyer. They were demanding answers after the court suddenly postponed the trial of 13 Falun Gong practitioners. According to a report by Wei Quanwang, a human rights website, the practitioners were arrested for installing satellites to receive signals for watching NTD television. NTD is known for reporting about topics censored by Chinese authorities. The Chinese Communist Party has cracked down on the Falun Gong spiritual practice since 1999. Part of the persecution has been denying practitioners access to proper legal assistance. Chen told Reuters that his beating was a, quote, very serious case of Chinese law being trampled upon and ignored. A Chinese democracy activist is trying to get an education for his daughter. For the past several days, Zhang Ling has been camped outside his daughter's primary school. He has been joined by about 40 others who are outraged that Zhang's activism is costing his daughter her education.
Protesters have been camped out around an elementary school in Liaoning Province, asking its administration to let a young girl go back to school. Zhang Anni is the 10-year-old daughter of Zhang Lin. He's a longtime activist and took part in the 1989 democracy protests. During China's annual political meetings in March, Zhang and his family were targeted. Unidentified men pulled Annie from school on February 27th. She hasn't been allowed back since. Now, about 40 friends, lawyers, and supporters have come to Hupo Elementary in Hefei City to protest.
The school has been very cold in denying Annie's schooling. This is a strange country with a strange education system. Now they want Zhang Lin to provide a guarantee for his daughter to go to school. It is shameful that something like this has happened under the education system in China.
On Monday, Zhang Lin said there were clashes with a group of men. They claimed to be police, but could not show any identification. Some of the protesters started a hunger strike. to pressure the school into readmitting Zhang Lin's daughter.
I started to go on a hunger strike from noon on Thursday. There's another netizen. We're doing it for 24 hours. Our thought is simply that when Annie can go to school, we will stop. So right now, we don't know how this will develop.
The school says it will only let Annie back if Zhang provides a promise from officials that they will not remove her from school again, claiming it frightened other students and parents the first time. Zhang is planning to sue the school for letting Annie to be taken away in the first place by unidentified men. Annie's case highlights the all-too-common practice of Chinese authorities. They target family members of those deemed a threat. Activists like Chen Guangcheng, Hu Jia, and Gao Zhisheng all have seen their children suffer for their advocacy work.
Human rights group Amnesty International says that the Chinese regime continues to execute more people than the rest of the world combined. In a new report, Amnesty estimates that China executes thousands of people every year, but the regime stopped reporting exact numbers around 2009. The death penalty is outlawed in Hong Kong, but there are no signs that the mainland will follow suit. Amnesty's Hong Kong director Mabel Au tells Radio Free Asia that Chinese authorities have something to cover up. She says there would be no reason for secrecy if, quote, the accused had a fair trial and there was sufficient evidence to convict. The countries that execute the most prisoners include China, Iran, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and the United States. Amnesty Secretary General Salil Shetty says, quote, governments still executing have run out of arguments to justify themselves. There is no evidence whatsoever to indicate that the death penalty works as a special deterrent against crime. Only 10% of countries worldwide use the death penalty. Shanghai authorities seized 6,000 tons of waste tailings, a kind of mining waste, in March. It was reportedly headed for refineries. Customs officials say they detained 2 people accused of smuggling the tailings under fake documentation. The waste was labeled as metal ore. Authorities found excessive amounts of toxic arsenic and cadmium from the tailings. Had the tailings made it to refineries, the result could have been disastrous. One official said it could cause contamination. It wasn't just waste tailings coming into Shanghai. Authorities also seized 115 tons of waste tires. They're banned for import because of pollution concerns. Chinese law bans imports of solid waste if they cannot be used as raw material or recycled safely, but the waste products can potentially generate huge profits. And coming up after the break, China will have almost 7 million new college graduates this year, but they're being warned that a job may be hard to come by. A look at one alternative education system that's taking off in China, and find out why this Swedish man has seen Shen Yun performing arts for 3 years in a row. And welcome back. China's college graduates face a complicated and tough job market, the country's education minister has warned. Deputy Education Minister Du Yubo said in Beijing on Wednesday that China's slowing economy and increasing graduate numbers, as well as systematic issues, have all led to a situation that has entered a, quote, critical stage. According to Du, China will have a record 6.9 million new college graduates this year. That's 190,000 more than last year, but they'll be competing for a smaller job market. 500 companies surveyed by the Education Ministry say they are planning to cut open vacancies by 15%. There is a slight increase in demand for doctors, tourism, and electronic services, but needs for professionals in mechanical engineering, mining, natural resource extraction, and construction are dropping. That's likely the result of China's cooling economy, which has traditionally been reliant on manufacturing and infrastructure development. As Europe's direct foreign investment in China grows bigger, so does its cultural influence. A one-century-old influence in particular is gaining momentum: Montessori education.
Starting in the 1800s, an Italian educator and physician named Maria Montessori would revolutionize education in the West. Montessori created a classroom that put the child at the center and used their natural curiosity to learn from their environment. This changed the teacher-centric model that for so many years had dominated European schools. And now it is taking off in China.
You know, the Chinese have moved very fast in the past 30 years to look at the West and say, okay, we're going to do better. So they've taken the ideas and just gone with it.
Marlene Barron has trained Montessori teachers all over the world. She currently works at an international Montessori school in Beijing. And her school isn't the only one. She says every time she turns around, there is another Montessori school. But some are more Montessori than others.
Montessori is everywhere. There are thousands and thousands of Montessori schools. Most are fake Montessori because Montessori sells.
U.S.-based Xavier University is working with Zhengzhou Normal University to develop its Montessori program. One of their main roles is to set the standard for Montessori education in China.
There are schools doing some really incredible things, and then there are schools that they're not.
And many Chinese parents, according to Gina Lovequist, don't know enough about Montessori to tell the difference. But that hasn't stopped some from trying it out.
They've heard about Montessori, or they like some of what they saw in the educational systems here, or how we live, or whatever it is. But they want it rooted in their Chinese culture.
In a country where most parents can only have one child, many are willing to invest a little more in their child's education. Holly Kellum, NTD News.
Yesterday, we reported that Django Unchained, Quentin Tarantino's bloody Western revenge flick, was pulled from Chinese theaters at the very last minute. Now, audiences are left wondering what happened.
After the last-minute cancellation of Django Unchained's Chinese debut, audiences have been left reeling over the missing reel.
We have no idea why Django Unchained was suddenly canceled, especially since it was only yesterday morning when the theater chain gave out a temporary notice. They told us we could not show this film.
I think it's a joyful thing that Django can be shown in China. But when I checked my Weibo microblog in the morning, I found out that Django was cancelled, even though it was almost shown. I feel this was quite unexpected. But when I think carefully about it again, there may be a rational reason for its cancellation.
No real reason has been given as yet as to why the film was taken down. Part of it may have to do with Chinese censors and the lack of a rating system for movies.
For now, there are various movie rating systems in foreign countries. I think some improvements should be done in this area in China. I have no idea what the exact reason is for the cancellation, but the Chinese movie censors can set an age qualification or control what kind of people can watch this film instead of just having only one standard rating system for all films.
Censors target nudity, extreme violence, and politically sensitive messages. Django Unchained has all three. It's about a freed slave fighting back against his oppressors. But Chinese censors had already made edits and approved the movie. So why, after heavily promoting it, was it suddenly pulled? For now, the answer is censored.
Shen Yun Performing Arts was in Stockholm, Sweden this week. NTD spoke with some audiences who saw the show for the first time and others for 2 and 3 years in a row.
Shen Yun performed for a full house on their last show at the Circus Theatre in Stockholm, Sweden. The New York-based Shen Yun Performing Arts mission is to revive 5,000 years of traditional Chinese culture with a world tour.
Det var fantastiskt. Väldigt intressant och man lär sig mycket.
It was amazing, very interesting, and you learn a lot. And I don't know so much about ancient China, so I think it's very fun to experience how beautiful it was. It was so well directed, and the combination of the ancient dances and the modern technique was so amazing. So I would like to come back sometime if they return to Sweden.
Tekniken var ju helt otrolig. Så att jag kommer gärna tillbaks någon gång om vi kommer tillbaks till Sverige.
What moved her was the spirituality from the ancient Chinese culture.
Jag tycker att det är
Yes, I think it's fascinating, and I see that there are different religions, but everyone does always have a God up there in heaven that you long for. I think that is very substantial.
Det tycker jag var väldigt påtagligt faktiskt.
Dancer Katarina Fischer came to see Shen Yun her second time.
These dancers dance from their heart. You can feel that it is a great culture behind this that is more than just choreography and techniques. It is some really great things that are behind this. I can't say what it is, but that was what brought me back here again after I saw it the first time.
Tobias Manry came with his wife to see Shen Yun for their third time. and he thinks this year's show is the best so far.
It is the dance and the music, all of it at once. You're lifted up as a human being, and the body gets good energy.
Bra energi i kroppen. Just i år så tänkte jag lite mer på det andliga, just de här texterna också
This year, I was thinking about the spiritual side of it. The lyrics, too, they reappear. They sing the same phrases again. I think about these very grand lyrics in songs that is about their faith and religion. That is very interesting.
Deras tro och religion också.
Shen Yun will perform in Paris, France on April 12th to 13th. NTD News, Stockholm, Sweden.
And that's all for this broadcast of NTD China News. For more about China-related topics, visit our website at ntd.tv or subscribe to our YouTube channel, NTD on China. Coming up next is this week's episode of Discovering China. Stay tuned.